Hi everyone, this is Alex of Dig Primal here, and today we're going to talk about the very important topic of vitamin C and progesterone deficiency. So why is progesterone so important? So progesterone and the topic of everything that progesterone does in the body is actually what got me started with the whole food approach in the beginning. So I had already been really into holistic medicine from a chronic pain perspective, but I wasn't really very good about my food, or actually not very good at all. So when I went to the reproductive endocrinologist because I was having a lot of problems with menstruation and cramps and all of those unfun things, she tested me over the course of the month, and all my labs came back, and she said my progesterone was insanely low, so as was my estrogen. So they were actually down by a factor of about 10 from normal. And she said, no progesterone, no baby. And this just freaked me out because even though my husband and I were not trying to get actively pregnant at the time, she said it was just a topic that we really were wanting to start talking about and start thinking about getting pregnant. And so this right here was really troublesome to us. It also meant I was having spotting all throughout the month. I had my period like 2-3 weeks out of a month, which is generally unpleasant. The other symptoms are commonly things like premenstrual syndrome, ovarian cysts, fluid retention, infertility, like I mentioned, and recurrent pregnancy loss. Because progesterone is actually, while it's important in ovulation and it plays a role, progesterone is actually responsible for, if this is the uterus and this is the lining, estrogen will make the lining grow, and then progesterone will come and make it super, super thick and dense and good for a baby to come, or a fertilized egg to come and implant. If the progesterone hasn't made this thick and welcoming, the embryo isn't going to implant. So that's why progesterone is so important, and that's why we're going to cover it today. So the entire process of ovulation, making progesterone, ultimately starts at the level of the pituitary. So let's draw a little person here. Sorry, my art skills leave something to be desired, but I think we'll get the point across nonetheless. So the pituitary sits underneath your brain. It's this little dangly thing. It's got an anterior pituitary and a posterior pituitary. And the pituitary makes gonadotropins, this fancy word right here. There is FSH, relevant to our discussion, of course, FSH and LH. So FSH and LH go down into in the body, and they act on the level of the ovaries. So here are ovaries, fallopian tubes. I'm going to draw a little uterus here. Alright, so they act on the level of the ovaries. So FSH and LH, when they're being released in a pulsatory type fashion from the pituitary, it not only changes throughout the course of the day, but it also changes throughout the course of the month. So what FSH and LH will ultimately do is, there's a lot to this, but I'm simplifying it greatly, of course, will give a spike in estrogen, and this spike in estrogen will make you ovulate, or generally will make you ovulate. So, and then estrogen stays kind of high, and then it goes down, and progesterone does something like this too. But basically, without these occurring in the earlier half of the cycle, this with the estrogen and progesterone doesn't necessarily happen normally either. So then once the ovaries have, you've released the egg travels down here. Well, more likely it gets fertilized in the fallopian tube, but that's neither here nor there for this discussion. And then what's left is a portion of the ovary that can now secrete progesterone. So the second half of the cycle, you're making this section of the uterus, like we discussed in the slide previously, very hospitable for a fertilized egg to implant, and that's how you get started. But for all of that to happen in terms of building this endometrium, making it, even if you're not looking to have a fertilized egg implant, this function of making the lining really strong and hospitable and stable is why, if you have good progesterone, you don't have any spotting, and you get your period normally and all of that good stuff. Sorry, I don't know what's happening with my my little pointer here, but hopefully that makes sense. All right, so now that we kind of know how that all is supposed to work in a simplified fashion, we can talk about how vitamin C plays a role. So vitamin C deficiency limits the ovarian response to gonadotropin. So those are the FSH that we mentioned before and the LH. So when those things can't act on the ovary, then you're not going to be making progesterone, like we discussed. Vitamin C also stimulates the production of progesterone in the luteinizing granulosa cells. So like we said, here's the ovary. See, here was the follicle, and it ruptured, and an egg was released. Right, so now that's gone, it's doing its thing. Here, all around here, there's cells called the granulosa cells, and they become luteinized, but that's what LH stands for, luteinizing hormone. FSH will come, act on the cells. They'll be making, they're making their progesterone and all of those things, and eventually FSH will tell the granulosa cells, make receptors for LH. And ultimately, in the cycle, when this happens, LH will come back when there's enough of it, act on these, and it'll downregulate the production, and you'll get your period normally. So there's a feedback loop here, but generally what the cells are doing here are making progesterone. And vitamin C is actually one of those things that stimulates the granulosa cells to make the progesterone in the body. All right, so now that we know what vitamin C actually does, let's talk about how you can practically get vitamin C. So a really common, I guess you can say, misconception is that vitamin C is the same as ascorbic acid, and this is because in terms of what the FDA has said, they've said they're pretty much equal. So you can market vitamin C as ascorbic acid, and if you go to the Vitamin Shop or Whole Foods, you're going to see powdered forms of what says vitamin C, and then you flip it over, look at the ingredient label, which I always recommend that you do, and it'll say ascorbic acid. So ascorbic acid is a derivative of vitamin C, but it doesn't have the same amount of function. So really, and this has been estimated and not proved scientifically, but if vitamin C is, it acts 100% like vitamin C, ascorbic acid has been estimated to act at about 20% of that. I don't have a study to cite for this, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's a rough estimate. I mean, this is just a synthetic form of it, and it doesn't have the same amount of action. So regardless of, whether this is a completely accurate number, it's still a fraction of it. So ascorbic acid is actually made from, in quotations, made from vitamin C, because here's how it's actually made. So corn syrup goes through all of these fermentation, acetogenation, oxidation, hydrolysis, recrystallization, and this is what you buy at the store. So it has to go through all of these steps to get ascorbic acid. And so it's not really the same at all. The reason that they have to do this is because vitamin C is very, in terms of things that you'd want to put on the market, it's unstable. It's not heat stable. That's why when you cook vegetables and pasteurize orange juice, it has much lower percentages of vitamin C than if you were to just eat an orange, grapefruit, all of those things, or make your own fresh pressed juice, because vitamin C isn't very stable. And so it makes sense that they've tried to make it more stable by going through all these processes, but it's important to realize it's not the same and doesn't have the same amount of function in the body. So I try to focus personally on whole food sources myself. So this goes for vitamin C as well. So one of my favorite things to do is in the morning, I usually mix up water for me to drink throughout the entire day. Since I go to work long hours, I'll take a big canteen, I'll fill it with water, and then I'll take small limes and lemons. They're actually, they sell in the store, they sell these tiny little versions of the lemons, because the thing is, once you cut a lemon or a lime and you start keeping it in your fridge, it starts to break down the vitamin C. So the level will deteriorate. So if you take a big lemon, you cut it in half and store it in the fridge, it's still going to have some vitamin C the next day, but it's definitely not going to be as much. So what I do is buy little versions. They're about, I don't know, 1.5 inches or 2 in diameter, and they cost about, I don't know, $4 for a huge bag. Even the organic ones that I get are pretty cheap. So I get those. I'll cut up a couple, 1 or 2, squeeze it in the water that I have. You know, if I'm drinking like 50 to 60 ounces of water a day, I don't really measure, but generally I think I come in at about there, especially if I'm a little more if I'm working out. I'll mix them all in, and I have it ready for the day, and I just sip on it throughout the day. Yes, throughout the day it starts to break down a little bit, but it's still better than, you know, the alternatives of using pre-made juice or anything like that. So that's one thing that I do. And then obviously I eat a lot of vegetables. Now, veggies are an incredibly good source of vitamin C, as are citrus fruit. And so a lot of times at night I'll have, you know, a grapefruit, I'll have an orange with lunch, things like that. So I kind of have a constant stream of fresh undegraded vitamin C coming in. It's also important to consider how long you keep certain foods in the fridge. Things like broccoli begins to lose its vitamin C content relatively quickly in the fridge. So when I buy broccoli, I actually eat it fairly quickly. In the beginning, you know, if I go shopping on Sunday, I'll eat it by Monday or Tuesday, so it's not degrading. But things that, like citrus fruit, since they come in this handy little package of, you know, having a shell on it and everything, then they don't get broken down as quickly. So there's that. Now, I do have on my website, if you go to digprimal.com, and there'll be a link below this video, you can sign up on the right-hand side of the sidebar. There's going to be a free sign-up to get a PDF, and I'll send it to you. It's a PDF that I put together that talks about the nutrient loss in plants, from the ones that lose it the fastest to ones that lose it the slowest. So if you sign up for that, I will send it to you. I keep mine on the fridge, and then when I go shopping, I kind of just keep track of what should I eat earlier in the week? What should I eat later? And I have a lot of less throwing away of stuff, and I feel relatively confident that I'm eating food when it has the highest amount of nutrients that it can possibly have. Now, the other thing that I put together is the top 20 whole food sources of vitamin C. And if you look right directly below this video, if you're watching it on YouTube, there'll be a link to the post, because I thought it would be incredibly boring if I read 20 foods to you. So I just put together the list. If you're watching this on YouTube, just click the link below this video in the description. Obviously, if you're watching it in my blog post already, then just scroll down. I have the top 20 whole food source vitamin C, and between this list and this PDF that you can get on Dig Primal, you'll be good to go. So that's pretty much it for today. I hope that was clear. If you have any questions, definitely go to the blog post, leave me a comment. I can clarify anything, as well as if you want to hear more about what kind of testing I had to diagnose progesterone deficiency, I'm happy to go into that. I'm also happy to go more into the menstrual cycle if anyone wants to hear more about that. But obviously, I want to cover the things that you want to hear about. So just let me know what those things are, and I can go into it. So have a great day.